Well, thank you again for joining us on Written for Our Learning. As we look at this episode, we're reminded that some of the lessons that we learn from the Old Testament are very positive in nature. We look especially at passages that we find in Hebrews chapter 11 that we know as heroes of the faith, or the role of the faithful. And we think of those heroes and we think about all the powerful things they did and the examples that they left for us of how to live an obedient life of faith, an obedient response of faith. But at the same time, we can learn from them in some of their more negative moments, in some of their weaker moments. We don't need to put these men and women on a platform or a pedestal as heroes that were not like us as it relates to some of the things in our lives that we deal with. Sometimes we're strong in our faith, and sometimes we we stumble a little bit. And that's the case with the individual that I want to look at for just a few moments here, and that is Joshua. If you will, please be turning to Joshua chapter 7. And here in a few minutes, we're going to read verses 6 and 7, a response of his that was not his greatest moment, that he was not at his strongest point when that was done. Sometimes even the best of leaders can have a lapse in their faith or struggle with difficulty understanding a situation. Remember there in Numbers chapter 13 where the 10 spies were sent into the land, 12 spies, were sent into the land. 10 of them came back with a negative response. We can't take it, even though they had ample evidence that the land was everything that God said it would be. But 2 men, Joshua and Caleb, came back with positive approaches. Let's go take it. We're able. They were convinced that God had promised that the land would be theirs, that he was giving it to them. And implied in that is God's going to lead them as they go into the conquest of the land to take it. Now, of course, they did not take it on that occasion. The bad report of the 10 spies spread throughout, and the result was wandering 40 years in the wilderness until that faithless generation died off. And then under new leadership, under Joshua, they're poised to go in to the new land. They had been told that God would fight for them victoriously. They would take the land if they remained faithful, if they did what God had indicated. You can look at that in Joshua chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. Because of our time, we won't read that passage here. But let's look at some events leading up to where I want us to focus on there in chapter 7, verses 6 and 7. First of all, we see the defeat of Jericho. The people complied to the letter with God's instructions as to what they were to do for 6 days, march around the city 1 time. And then on the last day, they were to march around the city 7 times, shout, the trumpets would blow, and the walls did indeed fall. And so you have powerful evidence. All of them had powerful evidence of the fact that God was with them, that he had promised them that he would do these things. But then the next battle, they were defeated at Ai. They did not send a full force. They were defeated. They were basically set to foot. They were run off by those of the city of Ai. And Joshua was concerned. That's to say it lightly. Look at verses 6 and 7 of Joshua chapter 7. Then Joshua tore his clothes and fell to the earth on his face before the ark of the Lord until evening, he and the elders of Israel, and they put dust on their heads. And Joshua said, Alas, Lord God, why have you brought this people over the Jordan at all, to deliver us into the hand of the Amorites, to destroy us? Oh, that we had been content and dwelt on the other side of the Jordan. Does that not sound somewhat familiar? Remember when the people were delivered from Egyptian bondage and they left Egypt? Over and over and over they complained, oh, that we had stayed in Egypt. The pots were full. God brought us out here into this wilderness to die. And we see that complaint happening on so many occasions, all the way to Mount Sinai. Lack of faith. Moses was frustrated with it. God got frustrated with it on various occasions. And here we hear Joshua saying almost the same thing. Why did you bring us here to die? Oh, that we had just stayed on the other side of the Jordan. Where was the confidence? Where was the faith in what God had promised? Now, I do realize that we can be a little tough on Joshua here because we know something that he didn't know whenever he made that statement. He did not know that Achan had taken those things that they had been commanded not to take. And we know that that was the reason that they lost the initial battle at Ai. But if Joshua had confidence in the promises, why did he not realize that something else was the problem? Why blame God? Why indicate the belief that God had let them down and God had caused them to do these things? We see so many things happen today in our lives that are severe. We see people who die in car accidents. We've now seen so many people who have died from COVID. And one of the first indications is to blame God for it. God, why did you do this? We need to understand that things happen. We need to understand that there are things beyond our control. And we need to understand that God's promises are going to stay. They're going to remain as they are. If we do not grow as God says we should grow, do we blame God? Do we doubt the effectiveness of His Word in saving souls? We shouldn't. Because you see, there's so many things that are left in human error, not doing as we should, or people just out and out rejecting what we do. May we learn from Joshua that even our leaders can have difficult times. Even our leaders can struggle. And so therefore, may we continue to encourage one another about God's promises. May we continue to encourage one another to grow in our faith. Until next time, God bless you.